Okay, fine. I think we are live now. Maybe the notification may take some time. So,
Okay.
hi, teacher. Good evening. Nice to see you once again here in this live session.
Hi, Nirat teacher. Thank you for asking me to join you. It's my pleasure. And how are
Okay,
you?
yeah, I'm fine.
Great.
So, I just wanted to ask few questions to you. Actually, we are
Sure.
starting the new batch from the 1st April 2024. And since you have been teaching English for a longer period of time and then you do come from the country of England, so how can we teach English more effectively to our students? What kind of methods and strategies can be followed by us, like which can be very
Okay.
effective for the beginners? Such kind of strategies that we follow in our teaching, which makes learning language effective, easier. The students, kids, adult, they learn in online lessons.
Okay.
What would you like to say?
There's a
Please
lot.
go now.
There's a lot there to unpick, I think, for learning English. Okay. You should know by now, I kind of do my own thing a little bit. So my way of kind of teaching English is to look at the person and kind of see what they're interested in. Maybe it's sport, maybe it's animals, or you just have to find kind of what their particular thing is that they like. Once you kind of find that, it becomes a little easier because you can tune into. They already have a motivation to learn because they're interested in the subject. So that's where I would start probably first. And then you can build on that. For example, I have a student who has just come back from London, and I've had her for maybe 2.5 years. And when she came to me, she was maybe A1 level. She's now aiming B2, high B2. In London, a man said to her, "Are you British?" Because she was speaking English so well. She said, "No, I'm Turkish." And he was amazed that she could speak English so well. But that's by, with her, it's we tapped into kind of like space and the universe, which she was really interested in. She likes to travel. So if you can tap into like your students' likes and wants or needs, I think you're on a good place to start. Really, you're at a good place to start, should I say? So it depends on the person, depends on their age. Obviously, children you have more fun with. Adults you can have fun with too. I also like gamification. And by gamification, I don't mean kind of like just playing games for playing games, but playing games for a reason to learn. That's a good motivation tool as well. So actually, there's a lot kind of to unpick in what you asked me to kind of comment on. So maybe start at the beginning and do little bit by little bit, because obviously adults are different to children, are different to teenagers. So it depends on, who we're talking about. But generally, the more English you can listen to and read is a very good start for anybody. But don't make it too hard on yourself. If you can't read or understand what you're listening to, then it's too hard for you. You should be able to understand at least maybe 2/3 of it, with a little bit of room to obviously progress. So if it's too hard, you can't understand or don't understand what you're listening to, you need to drop down a little bit. So that's kind of initially where I would start. Okay,
Okay,
so I packed a lot into that little conversation. Okay.
absolutely. So, as I got it, that you meant to say, like taking the topic, finding out the interest of students, like on which particular topic are they
For sure.
interesting in, and then trying
Yeah.
to
Topic or
helping
topic.
them to do the more conversation based on the interested topic the
Yes,
students, the learner, they like.
definitely. Because from those topics can come other topics as well. You might talk about travel, but then you might talk about kind of different countries. You might talk about the globe. It all has different vocabulary. It all has different kind of experiences. So, you have to get them motivated and interested in wanting to learn English. And I think you do that by kind of knowing what they they want, they like. Also gives you a better rapport. You know, you have something to talk to them about. If you don't know anything about that subject, it's also teaching you, so you go and learn about it. So it's expanding your kind of experience as well. And, you know, being like an international teacher, if you like, you learn different cultures from, well, here, like India, for example. You know, I didn't know much about India before I came and spoke to you. Now I can converse a little bit more about Indian culture than I could before. You know, so things like that. You have to be interested in your student, and because they're the one that's learning, you're not learning, they're learning. So you need to kind of find something that they're interested in. Otherwise, I don't see the point really. I don't know. Do you agree, or
Yeah, I
is there a point other than
no.
wanting to learn?
Absolutely, I do agree because it's very important. Based on the interest, then students will keep on showing their curiosity to learn and go forward.
For
That's okay.
sure.
That's what the conversation speaking practice is concerned about. I mean to say that, like, the teaching language as the second language, maybe the people coming from non-native English speaking countries where English is not spoken as the native language for them. So in that case, how about grammar structures, basic to advanced level, step by step? How can we build it up? Like, what are the methods and strategies can be followed so that student they don't get bored? Sometimes they are getting bored also because of the grammar structures, and how
Mhm.
important it is, how grammar teaching can be maintained along with the conversation speaking practice, so that students keep on developing their speaking practice and then do develop the grammar structures also. Because if students they don't have the knowledge about grammar, chances are they may keep on committing mistakes or making mistakes while having conversation speaking practice to someone.
Okay. Well, grammar obviously is an important part of any language. I particularly don't focus too much on grammar, but I have a friend who does it, focuses on grammar by storytelling. So she tells stories and kind of paints up ladders and, you know, puts them into the different tenses. So that works very well for her. So storytelling for teenagers, maybe younger children, is a really great way to learn grammar. Um, you can highlight the words, you know, you can play around with the stories, you can make them inventive, you can create the story with your student or students, or if you're in a group, they can create maybe a superpower story or something, you know, where he goes from the present to the past to the future, for example. Um, Possibly, maybe a good way to learn is also doing them kind of so present simple, past simple, you know, doing it like that. So there's a kind of a set line, if you like. So you follow a set pattern. But I think tenses keep it kind of simple, you know, don't make it too complicated. And it has to be kind of step by step. So there's no point kind of knowing how to present simple. So I swim, you know, I will be swimming is much more complicated. So you have to keep it to the level of your student, whether they're adult, teens, or children. So you can have an adult at A1 who wouldn't understand the future, you know, tense, and a child at B3, sorry, B2, who obviously may understand the future tense. So it depends on your child or the student to where you begin. But step by step, storytelling is great, and gap filling as well. So take out the word, give them the verb, and ask them to conjugate it. You know, put it into the correct tense. Playing around with tenses, kind of. Sometimes I've used like cards, and I've had them pick a card. So you might have to make a sentence, and then and I color code them. So verbs might be green, nouns would be red, adjectives would be blue, etc. So that kind of pattern, which gets them used to the structure in the sentence as well. So then you can visualize that. So it's quite clear that, okay, this is a verb, this is a noun, etc., etc. So that's a great way to learn as well. And then you can have like your base verb in say, I don't know, red, purple, whatever you choose. And then the ending or the change to that verb as it changes tenses would be a different color. So you can do it that way. So they have to, you give them the base verb and you say, okay, change it into the present perfect. So they have to change the word into the present perfect. So, but color coding is really helpful. Something I've used before and I found useful. Like I said, I try and like do things a little bit not by the book as such, but because I like to try and be a bit creative. So yeah, that's kind of how I would start. And kind of making, games of it as well. So getting them to come to the board, giving them a base verb on the board and say, okay, make that word into past perfect, past continuous, and then get them to use it in a sentence so you know that they understand the meaning of that. So, I'm not a very I'm not a bookworm. Like, I don't like to just read. I find it very difficult to learn that way. So I need to practice. So I can read a book for a week and I probably still wouldn't know what it said, but I need to kind of like read, look at videos, write, play around with it before I remember it properly. So we're all different learners. I'm a visual learner. So my way of learning is kind of by looking at things and tactile, getting hold of it, using it. But we're all different. So people can learn better by listening. People can learn better by touching, seeing, that. So it depends on your learning style too. So there's lots of different ways.
Absolutely, I do agree with you. You have explained a lot of things from storytelling, grammar
There's a lot
also,
there, yeah, for
speaking
sure.
also, word power also, and conversation also, making present to past, all those activities. Yeah, really, that's effective. But what about the translation? Like the people, those who have difficulty to understand English, what do you think about the translation method of teaching English? How effective it can be? Because whenever I watch some of the YouTube channels, I see that in our country, people are trying to focus people only to learn English through translation, and most of the people only want to follow that method of learning language, just firstly understanding in their own language and translating it into English language. This is what mostly happening, and people love to watch those kind of videos also. So how do you prefer this translation teaching method is going to be effective, or it's not
Okay.
effective? What you say
Okay.
about
That's a
it?
great question it's a great question because I've worked at schools in Turkey, and it's interesting to watch the Turkish teachers translating or kind of speaking in English, because some you can see that actually you can physically see them translating in their head, and others are quite fluent. So I think it affects the fluency, and when you're actually translating it in your head, because you're obviously thinking about the English in your target in your mother tongue and trying to translate it, so you can kind of see this going on, so that it's more fluent if you don't do that. There's a very noticeable difference I found. Some teachers, their pronunciation wasn't as good as others, but fluency was the key. I think you're definitely more fluent if you don't translate it in your head first, if you can know it. That's what I found. I'm still learning Turkish. I translate in my head, so I can know, thinking about it while I'm trying to think. Okay, where does this word go? Does it go here? Does it go there? It doesn't come naturally to me, so I'm not fluent, and you can tell I'm thinking about it. And so the translation method, I'm not sure that's great for me, and for maybe quite some others. I think you just need to read more, listen more, and then try and put it together. Because again, if you can't, hearing or listening is really important, because you kind of get that you can understand the words obviously in context as they're being said. So that helps again with the grammar structure of sentences and work, for example. But translation in your head is not good for fluency, in my opinion. It makes it quite difficult. And then your language is kind of like bitty. It's kind of like, okay, the dog, I walked the dog, because you're translating it into from one language to another in your head instead of coming out of your mouth. So that's how, Excuse me, that's how I see it. So,
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
mhm.
As you
Translation's
said
not for
that the
me that way.
translation method is not that much effective. Maybe it can be little bit hindrance for our the fluency. We want to be able to maintain the fluency when we keep on translating two
Awesome.
languages in our head at the same time. That marks the standard of our fluency. We want to be able to be fluent in English language. I absolutely do agree when we talk about the translation method, though this can be effective for the beginners
For
in
sure.
order to understand what is language all about, but it can't be carried about for the longer period of time teaching English. Teaching English to English
Yeah,
is more effective methods, maybe little difficult, but it works very perfectly.
for sure. But I'm also of the kind of opinion that there's nothing wrong in teaching beginners, particularly whatever age they are, with a little bit of kind of their own mother tongue. Because if you don't understand what I'm trying to say in English, if you can understand a little bit in your mother tongue, it can then turn into you understanding more in English. So I'm actually not opposed to kind of having a double languages or using two languages to initiate kind of understanding. And then as obviously they develop their English level, that can diminish and you can um, have the lesson or you can teach them all in English. I only say that because learning Turkish, I can remember sitting in a class of Turkish learners and the teacher stood at the front and spoke entirely in Turkish. And I did not understand one thing. So if I don't understand what she's telling me, how am I going to get better at what learning Turkish? I just didn't. That's not my way of learning. Some people that are great at that, but for me it didn't work, and I kind of got a bit demotivated, and it became challenging. I don't personally for my students. I wouldn't want that to happen. I prefer that they had some understanding and came away with some self confidence that they were doing a good job and they were learning English. But for me, unfortunately, in Turkish, that didn't happen. So I'm very mindful of kind of like how you learn, because it was difficult for me. It's a challenge if you don't understand.
Absolutely. Now, the final important question I think it's better to ask from you. What about the time period when we talk about learning language? We see some advertisements going on learn English in 45 hours, 20 hours, 1 month, 25 days. So, what can
Well,
be the actual time period when we talk about learning basic level for kids and for teenagers and advanced level? According to you, what can be minimum to maximum time period of learning language, especially when we talk about learning English language?
okay. Well, that's a loaded question as well, because how long is a piece of string? That is, how long's a piece of string? So, it depends on your level, it depends on your motivation, it depends on why you want to learn it. So quick learning English, I don't think will work maybe in the long run. If you just need it for a specific purpose, like travel, learning a map or directions, yeah, it's okay. But for long term commitment or to use long term, I think you have to take it as much as you can dedicate to it, really. It's entirely up to the person. I would say, I mean, my student I have who is now B2, kind of high B2, I've had her for maybe 2.5 years. Um, and she's coming up to, she's doing really well. So it depends, like I say, your motivation, your participation, how much do you do outside of the lesson? Are you watching films? Are you talking to people? What's your motivation outside of the lesson? Because if you're just going to your lesson and you're just leaving it there, then it's going to take a lot longer than if you actively um,
If we like
follow it.
maximize it, like minimum to maximum 3 months, 6 months, one
Okay.
year, 2 years.
Really, you want a time limit? Okay. Okay, I say minimum, um, say 2 months to learn maybe basics. the basic, literally
Two to
the
three months.
basics.
Let's go
But
for
I
2 to 3 months for the basic learning. I do agree. If you are
yeah,
constant
I think
learner,
no, definitely.
constant learner,
You're
two
not
to
going to learn
three.
English. Yeah, you're not going to learn English in like 45 hours. You're not going to learn how to speak fluently in 45 hours unless you're kind of B2, C1 level anyway. So then you're different genre. But yeah, 2 to 3 months maybe for sure.
For
I
the
mean, my
basic.
when I was learning Turkish, I did an intensive course over 6 weeks, but it wasn't good learning practice for me. It didn't work for me. So, like I say, everyone's different. So, okay, so yeah, 3 months to basics.
And
But basics covers a lot.
advance can go for 6 months
Advanced,
and 1 year. There is no limit also. 6 months, 1 year
no,
is
no,
important.
yeah, within a year, obviously, you should have a good grasp of A1, A2 if you're starting from the beginning. Should be able to like use it in a fairly fluent manner for sure. Yeah, it depends again how much you study.
It
If
means
you don't
like
study outside of
it
your
means
lesson,
if you want to learn very confidently, fully, completely, so 6 months to 1 year is very important time, at least to devote once in life. Once in life,
yeah, it
devoting at
is.
least 6 to 1 year for 6 months to 1 year for learning language.
Possibly, if you're starting at the beginning, that will give you a really solid foundation to build the rest of your English on. Because if you have a good foundation to start with, then everything else becomes a little bit easier. It's when you're starting, kind of if somebody's taught you English, but they've taught it the wrong way to you, and so you have to kind of go back and repair those faults, and it becomes more difficult. So if you have a good grounding, a good foundation, it becomes much easier in the future because you're building on what you already know. But when you have to change back and try and kind of correct something that has been taught to you wrongly, it's very difficult then to kind of unpick that in your own brain to learn it a different way. So a good foundation, definitely. And so I suppose the longer you spend on that foundation, the better it is for you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, not for you, for students.
Anything else would you like to say? I appreciate you, and it was really nice discussions with you since you are as a senior teacher
I,
teaching English
I see
language.
you.
No, I consider as a senior
Okay.
teacher and then having a lot of experience of teaching English language in different countries, even having interaction in online lessons also people from around the world. So it's a joy for me to meeting you
So
in the live
it's,
lesson.
thank you. It's been really interesting. Okay, one last thing. Okay, it's just pronunciation. Please don't worry about pronunciation. As long as you can be understood. Okay, pronunciation. It's nice to have some kind of accent to your English. We don't all want to sound like me, for example. It's nice to be a little bit different. You just need to be clear. Pronunciation is not everything. Okay, I know people get so kind of caught up that I need to pronounce it exactly like this, that, the other. You don't need to. Just be clear in what you're saying, and that's fine. So please don't worry too much about pronunciation.
Okay, finally, what do you want to say to our viewers about our academy, Divya English Academy? How is this online lessons and academy doing for the students according to your observation?
Okay, for some time now, I've been doing an odd lesson here and there with a lovely Nirat teacher, and his students are fantastic. They are so polite. They're so resourceful. They're creative. They try very, very hard. They're very motivated and they want to learn. And they're very interested in kind of like about me, my culture, things like that. So, from my point of view, they have an excellent teacher and an excellent academy. I think it's great, that you provide that to your students. It feels like homely, it feels a safe environment for them to learn and obviously to develop their language. Um, yeah, I've enjoyed the time I spent with you. It gets
Thank you.
longer every time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.